Hey folks, this is Tolly and welcome to some more game dev. Coming back with part 2 of attack opportunity work today. We did a stream earlier today where we started on this concept. We're going to try and finish it up, wrap up this feature. So we have our system in place now where if the enemy is going to perform an attack, we can move away from them, and midway through it freezes our animation, we get attacked, and then we finish the move. That's working okay. We do have issues where if I try and step back into the range of the enemy, we are getting a null reference issue somewhere in here, probably because we are trying to override this to say, hey, even though this tile is not occupied, please check it anyways, which is causing problems. I've been thinking about it while we took our kind of like lunch break for 2 hours, and I think that there's kind of a more overall like revamp I could do for this system. The main thing we're not really kind of testing for it all right now is simply the fact that the AI could have been able to hit us and now can't. So in this scenario, when we were moving back, we are saying that the player is moving. We're tracking that by simply just saying that the somewhere we're saying it here. This is the check. If the nearest foe has a planned tile, which means that they're going to be moving to a new tile, then we're saying they're moving. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we should be trying to do an attack of opportunity. Just because the player is moving doesn't mean that we can attack them. And so I think the tricky thing here that I don't really want to do, but might be the correct way, is we might want to evaluate our plan of attack and determine if we were to perform our plan of attack right now with where the player currently is, could we attack them? And then we could try and do a similar plan and say, if we plan to attack them where they're going to be, can we still attack them? And this would essentially equate to, essentially, is the player within the enemy's attack range? And are they moving out of our attack range? And I think that that would be a better setup for us, but I also think it's going to be pretty annoying to build that, because currently this system doesn't really have a concept of where is the player and where isn't the player. The closest we get to that is simply checking whether or not the tile we're targeting is occupied or not. And we can override this with the target is moving to say, hey, even if this tile isn't occupied, try to get the contents of that tile anyways. But it just feels like this whole setup is kind of a bit hacky. Mostly because we're not actually checking this kind of concept of range. And so the best way, the most secure way to do this would be to do the check the player's current position, then check where they're planning to go. But that's a lot of processing for every unit. And doubling it feels also wrong. So I'm wondering if there's a more simple solution we can get away with for the time being. I should probably change this enemy not to do the move and range attack ability, but here, now we get hit. Still breaks. So yeah, just checking to see whether or not the content... Oh, because this is a different location. Yeah, this happens in a couple of different spots. So I think we can get away with doing this. We'll get rid of the current error, but I think this is also going to allow the enemy to target the player even with ranged abilities. So if the player was in their ranged, like they're within their range, and then the player is moving, it'll cause them to trigger the attack instantly, even if they're moving to a location where the player could have still been attacked. That is all to say, my ramblings thus far, is really just trying, if I can sum it up, is basically I think I need a more concrete design of what is it that I'm trying to achieve. Okay, so that fixes the primary issue. We still have some errors around AI not found, which is to be expected. I think for today, I'm going to continue to hack this together, but this is going to be very fragile, and we're going to continue to find broken parts of this. I might want to just rewrite the entire way that we handle like AI evaluation or like the planning system, because I just feel like it's just not set up to handle this type of attack of opportunity system, and we're kind of forcing it to do it. And I think it maybe could be rebuilt from the ground up a little bit to be better structured for the type of gameplay we're actually trying to create. I'd like to see it in action though, and that'll better tell us whether or not the core idea is even going to work. So I'm going to keep kind of hacking it together for now, and then we can rebuild it from the ground up once we better understand how we want it to work. Right now it's pretty close. So if we have the enemy performing a attack in 4 turns, if we move, we see the enemy triggers the attack. But a couple of things. Number one, the player changes their facing to face the enemy, which causes their animation to flip, and then they slide facing the wrong way as they move, which is not what I want. I'd prefer if the facing remains the same and we ignore the normal like attacking system and instead just let the player remain walking away and we just hit them. I'd also like to see this number tick down, so instead of just being at 3, it'd be neat if it just quickly went 3, 2, 1, 0 and then the enemy attacked. That would feel a little bit better. And then finally, the AI is not planning a new action. They're still got their current attack queued up. I was hopeful that we could have some sort of system where the AI would replan its attack, and I'm a little confused on why that's not happening. We have this complete call, but it doesn't look like this is being used anywhere. And then decide next attack on new turn is being called if our CT is 0. How is the CT on the UI being determined? If we look at, I believe it's simple is the keyword here. Simple status component. And we look at, I think, this one. I believe this is the current active unit. And its CT value is here, which should be a 3. It is. Okay. How does this determine what number we're showing? Is that coming directly from the unit's stats? It looks like it's going to be the stat text component. It seems we add an observer for the stats. And whenever that happens, we refresh with whatever that stat is. Okay, so then if we add a very simple stat changer that counts that stat down to 0, that should just update on the UI automatically. And if the CT value is 0, it should decide to do a new attack. Oh, we're in the theatrical state. I want to see the attack states version. So this one here checks if our CT is less than 0 or we're stunned and we don't have a telegraph attack. Or sorry, check stun? This actually returns false. Okay, I think I see. Yeah, but regardless, if this gets set to 0 by the time we hit new turn, which is when we call start turn notification, which gets posted. Yeah, at that unit gets a new turn when we finish the round. This happens here, and this happens regardless. As long as something takes an action, this sequence complete will be called. Okay, so yeah, if we can get the enemy's CT down to 0, they'll plan a new attack. So both counting this down to 0, or counting this down to 0 will both fix the UI actually showing, and it will also fix it so the enemy actually chooses a new action after the attack of opportunity. That shouldn't be too hard. If we look at the AI director, we are building a sequence step here. We could just add a couple of new sequence steps in here for stat modification. Modify stat sequence step. And we're going to want to modify... What does this take? This takes the stats, a stat type, an operator, and a value. So if we want the stats, that's going to be the current unit.get stats. So we can do that here, stats. Is equal to unit.get component stats. Should be fine for now. And then the value we want to modify is the stat types. Why is it not giving me my parameters? Oh, because I didn't add the new in front. Simple. So we want to decrement the CT number, and we want to do operators dot subtract, and we want to subtract 1. And we want to do this a number of times. It's going to be easier to do this as a regular for loop, I think. Int I, where I is 0, and it will increment from I less than the stats CT stats type. For the amount of counter we have remaining. Perfect. So loop through this, minusing it 1 time. And then if we want to be a little bit fancy, we can also add a delay sequence step. And add, like, I don't know, 0.05f delay in between each of these countdowns. And we'll put this at the bottom so that there'll be a slight delay between the number drop and the actual rest of the actions. Oh, shoot. We want this to happen before the attack. That means I want to do this up here. Sure. This whole thing feels like it's... The whole AI behavior could get a major overhaul once we have a better understanding of what combat's actually going to look like, but it still feels like we're still prototyping and finding the fun, and so refactoring while we're in the middle of that just doesn't make any sense. Just hurts me physically. I look at it and I'm like, this is not good, but it's fine. Okay. I mean, that is working. The countdown's maybe a tad bit quick. This could maybe be like a 1/10 of a second instead. So you can read the number counting down a little bit easier. Not super necessary, but there we go. Interesting. So the chase behavior is completely busted. When we see the purple flashing indicator, or just purple in general, it's flashing because it's going to act in one turn, but this is the AI deciding it wants to chase the player as far across the map as it needs to in order to reach the player. And I think if we skip one turn, does this work properly? It does. It is braking whenever we move. And I'm gonna guess that's because we're kind of messing with its AI too much. Let's go take a look at the foe attack state. Inside of move towards nearest foe, which I believe is what it should be doing, we added this extra bit of logic that says try to move to the current tile. If there is no planned tile or if the enemy is moving, and I think that is a mistake in this context. I think for movement tech, we want to let the AI move with the anticipation of where the player is going to be. Because the target moving tech should only really be involved in the attacking aspect of the enemy's AI. Man, this is confusing to me. But I am getting through it, so streaming has been helpful. Yeah, it's still broken though. Alright. So if I skip a turn, it works. If I move, it breaks. So let's take a look at what's going on here. We're going to have to walk through it and try and understand. I'm going to guess all this hacking is just like completely breaking something. So we're going to move. We're going to find the nearest foe, which is the player. We're going to see that the player is moving. We're going to skip waiting and instead try and activate our ability immediately. We're going to flag that the enemy is moving. We're going to come in here and I don't think we're going to hit any of these, and we're going to go into plan direction independent. Should move. It's going to get its movement options. It has an override range of 64, so it'll try and move as far as possible. So it's basically going to get a lot of tiles that are potentials for it to move to, because the player is quite far away. It has no priority moves, which means no ability is telling it where to move. And then it's going to loop through each of the move options. And it's going to try and determine whether or not there's a good attack option. We have 760 potential attack options. It's going to go through here and try and find one that is the best. And it doesn't find one, which I think is to be expected. I want to get back to a purple crystal. It's still doing the brown. Okay, there's purple. So we're going to move again. I want to have a breakpoint here, because I think it's going to go through, try and pick the best option. It's not going to find one, so it's going to come out here and find that the ability was null, at which point it should check to see whether or not it should move, which it should come with back with true, and it's going to try and move towards the nearest foe. This is all fine. And then it's going to try and find the nearest foe, which it does. It's going to properly check where they're gonna go, and eventually it's going to assign a move location where it wants to try and reach, returns, and it has that. Okay, so it knows where it wants to go. Oh, and then it comes to here, and because it's moving, it's trying to do the mid-move step sequence add because it's trying to do an attack. But in this context, we're not doing an attack. We're just going to... we just want to move. So if the plan of attack... I'm going to assume ability is null in this situation. Yeah. If the plan of attack's ability does not equal null, and the target is moving, then we'll do a mid-move response. Otherwise, we will plan as per normal. Okay. It's just hacks on hacks. I'm gonna keep telling myself it's fine though, and we are going to get it functional, and then we will find a way to clean it up. Alright, now, does this allow the enemy to chase after us? And does the enemy still perform attack of opportunities against us? Activate the enemy. It wants to attack us in 6 turns. If we move early, it triggers its attack immediately. Okay, there's a purple, so it's going to try and chase to us. And it does move directly next to us, at which point it then tries to perform an attack, and if we try and move away, it will chase. So now the problem looks to be not to do with the purple action of chasing, but with this like move to the other side of the player action. Because that is essentially an ability, but it's like a move-based ability. So the hack we put in just now isn't going to really solve all of our problems. Okay. I guess what is the type of situation, like what, the thing I need to ask myself is, in the situation where we want the AI to perform this special action, which is to move to the other side of the player, because that's what this is doing when it's on that like brown arrow. It is trying to initiate this ability where it wants to move to the other side of the enemy. Interesting. Like, what is the intended functionality here? Oh, hello, first-time chatter. Hope you're having a good day. Sorry, trying to figure out how to pronounce. I'm assuming it's something like epidemic. but like cut short Epidec. Okay. So what is this ability trying to do? This ability is trying to move the enemy to the opposite side of the player, because the idea was we wanted to have them try and backstab the player or something along those lines. And this attack of opportunity system, what is its goal? Its goal is to make it so that if the player moves, we execute the current ability immediately, essentially. We execute the current ability if it's an attack immediately. Maybe that's the way I should be putting it. So for this one, I'm going to try and move. It doesn't make sense for it to try and interrupt the player because it's not going to attack. So it should just wait. But if it doesn't execute at all, and it just counts down, it's just an opportunity for the player to run away. Is it possible that maybe this... Is it possible this movement type behavior doesn't make as much sense in the attack of opportunity type world? Again, what is the behavior I'm looking for? If it's moved to the opposite side of the player, should it just do that immediately? So here, if I take a move, should it not just move to here or here because it's going to try and go left or right of the player? But instead it only moves a single spot. Oh. Because it's not... No, that doesn't make sense either. I was going to say maybe it's because it's tracking the wrong location. But no, it should be seeing the planned tile and trying to move to where the enemy's going to be. So it should have moved to one of these two. But instead it moved next to where the player was, not where they're going to be. I guess that's because it's also figuring it out based off the priority moves. When did these get populated? This is a predict-based ability. I was going to say maybe this system is not looking at the right location, but it 100% is. Okay. Let's dig. It has no plan. It has infinite range, I believe. No, it's using its normal movement range. Where is it planning this attack? Why are we not hitting any of these breakpoints when we move? Oh, okay, we hit this one. Okay, it's got 2 turns. We move. Oh, it's checking every unit. Okay, so the mini slime goes... Now this is actually the boar. This is the bat. Okay, and then we actually get into the attack state for the real slime. We come into here. We get our next plan of attack. It is the bow attack pattern. It's going to check to see whether it can move. It's going to try and move towards the foe. It's going to get its move options. And then it should have a list of priority moves. It does. And it's trying to move to 8, 9, 8, or 9, 6. Which I have no idea. That sounds fine. I guess technically we need to see what does it come out with the nearest foe. The nearest foe is on... Current tile is 7, 6, and planning to go to 6, 7. Then these positions don't look right. Why did we not get here at all? Did we not predict the ability? We should have hit a... We should have hit this find nearest unit effect. Why did we not hit that? I'm going to kind of just reset here for a second. We're going to let it move up to us. It's going to attack us. That's all fine. In fact, we're just going to move this to one side in an attempt to see what's happening in behind a little bit more easily. Yeah, that's all okay. Okay, now it's on the kind of brown yellow indicator, so it's going to try and move after us. I'm going to take a step. At this point, I would expect that when we actually get to the slime, I feel like we should be hitting this chunk of code. I suppose that still wouldn't be yet. It would have been here when we decided our next attack. At this point, it's already decided what it wants to do. And we've already moved. And that's why it moves next to us, not where we are. Because it would have decided on its action the previous turn when it showed the telegraph crystal. It would have decided which tiles it was trying to go to at that point. Oh, that makes sense, actually, and I hate that it makes sense. Okay, then why does it break here? Because the plan hasn't changed. It still has the same 2 priorities. Because that's what it was telegraphed as. So it sets these up and says, this is what I would like to do. And then we get all the way back out to here. But the spot it wants to move to, it's already at. So it doesn't set anything up. It's done what it wants to do. It moved to the tile that I told it to move to. And it will continue to stay in that spot indefinitely. And it doesn't count down and plan a new action because it's not actually doing an attack. It's doing a move. So it's not actually doing any of this logic. So everything is working exactly like it's supposed to. That's the worst. The worst is when you debug stuff and you're just like, yeah, no, it's working correctly, but it's not doing what I thought it would do. But that's not because of some fault or bug. It's just like, no, you wrote the code to do exactly what it's doing. Okay, so again, what do I want this to be doing? If this enemy has the action that it wants to move next to the player, I think it's doing exactly what it's supposed to. The main difference is if it's going to perform this action, it should set its CT to 0. I think if this target count is greater than 1, then we should make sure that we're setting our CT to 0. This is continuing to be a really bad hack. I just want to be very clear on that. But we're essentially saying if you're going to move, your CT should be 0. I think this is going to cause a bunch of other ripple effects and problems. But I just want to see if this fixes it. It does. It even, because it's properly setting it to 0 no after the move, it tries to do the range attack that it wants to do. Yeah. I don't like it, but it's creating the functionality that I want. And sometimes you can't argue with that. So the question will become, how do we simplify this into something that is more specific? Yeah, and it does still work in normal setup as well. I think this is doing what I want. I think I just need to play with it and see if it is what functionally we want to be happening. And then if everything is working how I want, then I think I need to give some more thought to how we refactor the core system to better allow this to exist, opposed to what it feels like a series of different hacks to kind of get this behavior. There is some weirdness still where when we stagger an enemy, we have a ton of time to move away. And then I'm a little weirded out that like here nothing happens. I'm gonna guess this might just be a data issue, because after we've moved so far away from the enemy, I would expect that it would try and chase us, but instead it's choosing to do the bow attack. It does randomize. It should randomize between these options, and it should ignore anything that isn't valid. Bow attack should return this one. It has an override range of 5, so it should be able to target the player 4 tiles away. But we are very clearly more than 5 tiles away, so I'm not sure why it ended up choosing this one. And even if the bow attack pattern is somehow using the AI bow version, this one does have an -1 is normal range, so that'll only be able to move 1 square basically. It has a min and max of 1 and 2. Oh, I guess this one doesn't have a min and max because it's predict based. So as long as this comes back as valid, it can be a chosen option. Even if the enemy can't reach the player. So what determines whether or not it is valid? We just have a valid effect that we set. But this requires that the tile that it's trying to reach is valid. This tries to find the nearest unit. And this just tries to find a unit next to it, and if that tile next to it, that enemy is valid, then it, yeah. So none of this system has a concept of can the enemy actually walk that far. And so because of that, it says, hey, I found a valid tile next to the player that it can go to, so this is a valid ability, but it's not actually validating the distance. And then this ability only has an override range of 5, so it's not far enough. If we give it an override range of 64, then technically that's like the whole map. It's bigger than the whole map. Might as well be int max for our purposes. But yeah, if we set it to 64, then it should move to the valid tiles it's finding, I think. So we're going to start by staggering the enemy. And then once the enemy's staggered, if we move really far away, it ends up choosing this one, and then it will move really close and then try and range attack. Okay, so that fixes it. So it's kind of a data issue. I mean, realistically, if I did want that one to have like a max distance that it can chase the player, then I'd probably need to add more logic to allow it to invalidate if the player's too far away. Last thing. Let's see if we can fix the directionality. So when the enemy hits the player, it causes the player to face the enemy's tile. But that then causes the player to like sidestep as it moves to the next tile over while facing the enemy. How do we fix that? I guess the easiest way is just to set the direction back. After we've done the elapsed, and this response is finished, set the player's direction back to whatever direction they're supposed to be facing and continue moving. So this will cause the enemy to snap to face the player during the attack, but then once the attack is over and the movement continues, ideally things should return to normal. Might be that simple. Yeah, that does it. Now, whether or not we want the player to change facing for the attack is another question. Like, maybe it would be better if... Well, that looks better, actually. When it's a ranged attack, it feels a little odd because the facing is kind of choosing between facing this way or this way because we don't have a diagonal facing. So that seems off. But when it's an actual physical attack, if this enemy will choose to do a physical attack, it will not. I'm going to just take it out and then spawn a new one. But if it chooses a physical attack, having the facing change seems better. That's an interesting question. What happens if the player dies? I think that actually might have been what we want to see. The player finishes the move and then collapses. I guess the only other option would be having the player like move back to the center of the tile and then collapse. I don't think I want the player to collapse midway between two tiles, but I guess it doesn't really matter because we are going to the game over screen and going back to the Goddess Realm. I also think if we just remove the kind of behavior of bow attack, which is like move and then attack back to back, it like plays two different abilities in order. I think this ends up looking a lot better because then we're only going to do the physical ones. Oh, interesting. In this situation, the enemy does not have a valid ability because the two attacks that it has neither one of them are able to hit the enemy at this distance. And so it ends up just moving towards the player as like a default action, essentially. That's a data issue. To fix that, I think we just need to make it so chase can happen at 2. Yeah, this one only happens at range 1. And this one only happens at range 1. So both of those only happen if the enemy is 1 tile away. But if we change chase to happen at a minimum of 2 instead of minimum of 3, that'll fill in that kind of weird gap. And now it'll chase if we get too far away. So we get hit, and then it chooses chase. And then if we move, it'll chase us to the right spot, and then choose another one of its big attacks. Okay. So we have the freedom to move as much as we want. We're not adding any extra values to movement. But we've now added an attack of opportunity system so that the enemy will then perform its attack instantly if you try and move away. So you can't just run away for upwards to 6 turns while it's charging. And it's much better to just engage it in combat and defeat it. Yeah, I think that solves our movement problems. Now we don't have to worry about putting movement on the actual menu down here. We don't have to have it have some amount of time associated with it. We just let you move freely if you want, but if the enemy's next to you, you just get hit. This needs a major refactor to kind of adapt the whole AI system to deal with this type of situation. All the stuff we've done works. Technically, I could just leave this alone, but there are parts of the code now that we'll never reach because, like, it's always going to say, oh, if you're moving, then use this section of the code every single time, and the part that, like, you know, tries to plan to attack where you're moving will never get executed. It still exists, but it's essentially dead code, which is confusing. Yeah. Okay. This seems good, but I'm not willing to refactor everything just yet. We're gonna give it a little bit of time. But I'm liking how this solves most of my major issues with combat, simply by putting the power in the enemy's control rather than hampering the player's abilities. Sometimes the simplest solution is the best understood solution. Turns out attack of opportunity is a good way to deal with the enemy running away, or the player running away, when you give them a lot of movement points. Okay, cool. I anticipated this taking the full extra hour here. I'm not sure... What do we want to do next? There's a way to make this so this gets underlined. Yeah, I remember. Okay. So let's say the movement system is solved for the purposes of this demo. I arguably could leave everything we've done today for this first demo and try and refactor it maybe at the end of the month. We'll see what other problems it runs into, but again, if we get rid of a lot of the more crazy elaborate prototyping type movement stuff, like getting rid of the move and range attack concept we just did, and we just have it so the enemy chases you if you get too far away and does melee attacks, that does make the system kind of just work, and it's probably good enough for the enemy types we'll have in the first chapter. We could go look at some bugs. So bugs and polish wise, there are a number of small issues we're still running into. So I could just pick one of these and try and solve one of these for the rest of our time today. Or I could go off camera and call it a bit early and focus on maybe finishing up the rest of the dialogue for chapter 1 off camera. And that way tomorrow we'll be ready to start on some cutscene work. Yeah. I think those are our two options. We either work on some bugs, or we look at the dialogue. Similar to how this movement stuff could be refactored, but is probably fine. I'm going to say a lot of these bugs also are bad and need to be fixed, but are likely fine for the time being. I think because I have all this time off for the next 4 weeks, I want to focus on content creation and, you know, building in stuff rather than coding and fixing things. Because I feel like coding and fixing things we can do once we fall back into our kind of like Sunday routine once this break is over. But content creation, I feel like, requires more continuous attention to detail. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to call it here for today. We're going to stop a bit earlier than I intended, but we did finish the thing that I wanted to kind of get working. And then tomorrow we will come back and do some cutscene work. And off camera, I'm going to continue to work on dialogue. And then we'll be ready to kind of hit the ground running on cutscenes, which honestly could take the rest of the week if I wanted to. I don't know if I do, but cutscenes are going to take us a while. And then when it comes to combat with like enemy placement, enemy behaviors, progression balancing, building the skill trees, I think some of this is going to come out of having a better understanding of how the cutscene flow is going to feel, because we'll probably want to have more progression experiences and better level ups based off of how the flow is feeling. Like, so if I need more downtime and the cutscenes are feeling like they're dragging, I can insert more combat. But if the cutscene stuff feels like it's flowing pretty well, then we can maybe push out some of the progression stuff a little bit into the later half of chapter 1. Okay, yeah, this is what we're going to do. We're going to call it here. We're going to say that the movement system is quote-unquote solved. We'll continue playtesting over the next 4 weeks. I'm going to go work on some dialogue stuff off camera, and then tomorrow we'll hit the ground running with cutscenes. And I don't think we'll need to cut it short tomorrow, because I think that we're going to be building cutscenes for a while. In fact, I'd be surprised if we get through even reworking the initial Demon Lord Castle cutscenes. I'd like to get into some of the forest related ones, but yeah, we'll see. Cool. For now though, this is going to be Tolhi signing out. Later folks.